I wanted to begin by asking about the how you allow the scenes to breathe, which is such an interesting science experiment as an audience member because it allows me to get in this position of I don't know whether to tighten up or relax here. So I'm curious about designing that, and then for you performing in that space, because I imagine you have to kind of fill in the void a little bit or color in the gray spaces with your reactions to what's going on within the space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy that you're asking this question because it was such a central part of this movie, and it's challenging sometimes for some. I mean, I think the slow burn has become somewhat acceptable for modern audiences. There was a time where no one understood that, but
until Exorcist 3.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I grew up on movies. Even if you watch older movies, that generally the pace is. But anyway, but for this movie in particular, two things: physically. Certainly in the first 15 or 20 minutes, I really wanted the audience to feel like they wanted to get the fuck out of this, because I wanted to show how sort of isolated and lonely this woman's life is, So we're sitting there watching her eat a bowl of noodles alone for a little bit longer than you normally would in a movie. And then the dialogue was another one. I had discussions with each cast member that everyone, before you responded to what the other character is saying, stop. It's a game of chess, because if she says what she really wants to say to the monster, she's dead. If somebody else says what they really need to say, so there was this sense of really thoughtful, go over it in your head a couple times. Should I say that? Should I say this? And so I'm glad, for better or worse, that you picked up on that, because it really was a big part of this movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was really excited when we talked about this in the way that, we're going to pace the film, because as an actor, it's nice to have space to, not only really listen to your scene partner and take in what they're saying and then maybe be really thoughtful, but there's so many emotional moments in this film that, if you're really upset and you're having a conversation with someone, sometimes you're trying to just compose yourself and control yourself and maybe not be sobbing at every moment or be angry and explode. And I think that that's what was always going on inside of her, is that she wanted to cry, she wanted to kill somebody, she wanted to ask for help, but she couldn't. So it gave me time to internalize that and collect myself each time before I delivered my lines. And a lot of that isn't a common pacing, but it's one of my favorite as an actor, to take time to let my performance exist and also get uncomfortable maybe in my own skin, because I think that that's how she should feel.
Right. Yeah, I mean, particular for the scenes with her and Agyar the monster. I mean, the main note was no matter what your line is in your brain, just be thinking how much you hate this guy and you want to rip his face off, but you can't. So because you're trying to figure out how to get out of this scenario.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you were held hostage and someone had a gun to your head, you have to remain calm. Let's talk this through. And so I think that really came through in her performance, where you just see what the rage is building inside, but for her own survival and the survival of her daughter, that she has to try to, remain composed as much as possible.
That's definitely something that I took note of, with how restrained you were in those moments where probably naturally you would want to scream because you're feeling.
I'm not gonna lie, having someone biting your thigh and licking it and being and saying awful things to you, whether it's real or not. We really. It's funny. I was talking about this earlier. I rehearsed with every other character, but I didn't with him, because I liked that it was sort of the first time we did these scenes, and more often than not, we would do kind of one take of each of our coverage, because it was just a very authentic response to each other. And, you could tell the more he pushed me, the more I would get uncomfortable or upset. And then he would thrive off of that and vice versa, So, yeah, it was just a very organic experience, and just being in the dark with something that looks like that, and it's touching you and putting it, those teeth are sharp, let me tell you. Yeah.
So you're okay? There's no psychological wear on you?
Time will tell. I wasn't okay for a while, honestly. After we shot that, it took me a while. I was in a dark place. It was a dark film, and I had to sort of live there the whole time. It wasn't like, oh, goes through a dark patch, but then she comes out and she's having, there was no real positive moment in the film other than that conversation with Heather Langenkamp, which at that point she's so beaten down. It's like, oh, someone's being nice to her, but she's still not a happy person. And so, yeah.
Yeah, the tone of the film is interesting because, when you make a movie and you're there and you've worked on it so long and you've seen it a million times, you kind of become desensitized to it. But yesterday when we were screening it, I was like, I hope we're not bumming everybody. This is heavy. Like, I was experiencing it in a different way, and I really just how dark it is,
Well, I took to how numb she was trying to make the whole experience for herself, because she had no way of grasping the ground anymore, and so that's why I brought up that moment, because I felt that.
Oh, I'm so happy that I'm really glad that it was. That's numb is the perfect word. Yeah, you're trying to just constantly push it down. And I think we've all been there in our life, in one way or another, whether it's abusive relationship, if you struggle with some sort of addiction, you're a parent and you're terrified all the time. Everyone can relate to it in their own way. A friendship dynamic that's not healthy, and so it was really I think an important thing, a character to portray, and I just like flawed characters. I think they're way more interesting.
And there's also, I guess, the psychological wear of what Bonnie Aarons says to you as Mindy's mother of, you look terrible. And then there's the lady in the grocery store. And I was like, my God, these people are so forward to her.
It's true. And, especially as a woman, every girl has struggles with their own mother, because your mother's always going to be the most honest. If you gained weight, if you look tired, if you look, they hate your hair, and so I think that it was really important that Bonnie's character, and if you know Bonnie Aarons, she's a very direct person, so sweet, nowhere near, she would never say something like that to somebody, but she's a very direct person, so it came out very authentically her. And we always wanted to play mother and daughter, so that was really special. And we all have those friends that you're like, I would never say that to somebody, but she does.
But the generational thing is real, like a parental thing. A magical thing happens. Like once you have a child, suddenly your parents were perfect. Like we never had that problem. And it's such that you're doing everything wrong. And I think those things are. Certainly not everybody's mom speaks that, harshly, but I think there's a your parents feel like they don't need a filter because they raised you. So these things she's saying to her are so cold-hearted, that I think they hit home for a lot of people. Yeah.
And I mean, we all have those conversations with our parents where you're just like, they make you cry so easily. Like, honestly, just that scene with Bonnie, I was like, she would start talking to me and I'm like tearing up. I'm like, because it's like you don't want to have those honest conversations with your parents. You don't want to hear like how you disappoint them. You know what I mean? And I think that Mindy feels like she's constantly disappointing everyone, her daughter and her mother and her friends, and and it's just a sad place for her to be. Yeah.
And it's perfectly, there's the other end of it, which is that scene with Heather where she goes through. I'm curious about the origin of those 3 stages, which is very astute, because I definitely feel that as a parent, as I'm watching, because my son's 7, but I have nieces and nephews that are older, and I'm seeing that pattern that is described in that scene of being in front of, being behind your children, being in front of them, and then being beside them as they go through difficulties in life.
I mean, it was something that I'm a parent too, and I have my oldest child is 20, so I have now this this person in my life that is now an adult, and he can do things for me now, and not only emotionally but like physically, and then we have a daughter together who's 5, so we have both ends of the spectrum. We're at stage 1 and 3, so it was just something I just sort of was trying to coming up with a device where this person that came into Mindy's life could offer advice without being too on the nose with it, and obviously she not to give away too much, but she's scarred as well, so it leaves the audience to decide whether she has her own Agyar, or is Mindy really just seeing this, and here's finally a person that I can relate, that seems to have gone through something similar to me. And I think we all have those moments in life where someone hopefully comes into your life that can offer some some advice that really resonates with you and puts you on a path to triumphing over some of your issues, you know. So there was very, you know, really important scene in the movie that, thank God we had Heather do it, because I don't know, she just did something that day that just worked, you know, because I knew the monster was going to work, I knew that, you know, but that was like a really important moment that, you know, that if it wasn't the right tone, it could have felt a little cheesy, maybe, you know.
Yeah, it put the drive back in Mindy for.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a moment where she says, when she explains it, and you can see the wheels starting to spin.
Well, it's the first time that ever Mindy gets empowered by something, and she stands up for herself finally, is because of, you know, just having one person be kind to her and see her and clearly be trying to help her, because everyone's just judgment and disgust, and instead of that, it's like this woman, you know. And Heather was just an amazing scene partner. Like, you know, sometimes as an actor, you connect with people when you look, and we had this connection when we were doing that scene that you can't make up. You know what I mean? We sort of kind of got lost in each other in the conversation, and it felt really great. And it also, like, was the only time I think that I felt like I could breathe during the movie. So it was really nice.
It's the fun thing about a movie like this is that, you know, I didn't want to go overboard in explaining the whys and the how come and why.
Just questions.
And so, you know, it allowed each actor and hopefully audience member to sort of enter it in their own way. And Heather, I think, approached her role sort of as that she was Mindy in the future. You know, almost like a ghost figure coming into, you know. And I thought that was very, because I never crossed my mind that was a way to look at it. And so, yeah, it was kind of nice you didn't have to explain why or how did those scars come from. It just, you know, it just is, as are most things in life. You know, we don't always get the historical backdrop of things that are happening to us. So.
Well, I think whatever it was, they were clearly healed, and she overcame something very massive. And the fact that she overcame it, and they were healed scars, and she seemed like, I think that's all Mindy needed to know.
Yeah, there's promise ahead. Yeah. I'll cut you loose on asking about the origin of another line. It's the sequence at the bus stop, and it's the line about, like, because I think we all kind of think about this, because we think about the forks in the roads in our lives, and it was that line about how many people just kind of pass us by, and they could have been meaningful relationships, but we just keep moving forward. So I'm curious about the origin of that line, but also, did it cause you to reflect at all about some of those experiences that you may have had in the past like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think in that scene, the point of that whole sequence is that I feel like Mindy goes out to manipulate somebody, and I think, but as she's talking to him, I think it's actual truth that comes out. You know, she's saying things that she really means, you know, and I think this sort of almost guilt starts to overwhelm her, and realizing that, you know, and I think that all the time. You know, we live in Los Angeles and we're surrounded by millions of people every day, and I have those moments where I'm like, all of these people have lives, and most of them I will never know, but that person could be so important. You know, it's just, you know, just you know, I'm sure we all have those thoughts, but in particular, that moment, I think I hope it comes across as her crossing over from, I'm going to bring this guy back to the house so, you know, terrible things can happen, to maybe this could be somebody in my life that means something, you know. I don't know.
Well, and I also think, like, her character, she's sort of speaking of herself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everyone just has this judgment of her, but they don't really know what's going on inside of her. And I think she sees him who's clearly lonely and, you know, afraid of life, and she's almost giving him some wisdom. Because I think that's the whole movie, is just, it's just this judgment on her, but no one really knows what's actually going on. Like, I have a monster that's eating me alive and I need help, but I'm not going to say that, and instead it's just, this incredible disgust of this woman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that is an underlying theme of the whole movie, is you just never know what's in somebody's basement. You know what I mean?
And once you start spilling truth, usually the other might do the same, and so I think that's connected.
It's important too. You know, she was asking him if he had people at home. Like, she's not a bad person. She's like, I'm desperate, but I don't want to take someone's husband or parent away from them. And she was trying to make sure that he, you know, and she's struggling with it the whole time. And I think, like, ultimately Mindy's a very good person that no one ever sees that side of her.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the thoughtful question.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Really nice to meet you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.